You think rural Appalachian families in the early 1970s only threw together basic bread and meat? Think again. These hard-scrabble mountain communities and dusty southern back roads served up some of the most ingenious, resourceful, and jaw-droppingly creative sandwiches in American food history. Let's dig into 25 forgotten hillbilly sandwiches you never knew were keeping entire families fed, loved, and connected to their heritage during the early 1970s. Fried green tomato sandwich. Late summer in rural Georgia and the Carolinas meant the frost was coming and gardens had to be harvested fast. These thick sliced green tomatoes were dredged in seasoned cornmeal, fried in cast iron, until their exteriors turned golden brown and crispy, while the inside stayed firm and tart. Slapped between two slices of soft white bread with a smear of mayonnaise, this sandwich represented the thin window between summer and winter. The beauty wasn't just the taste, it was the texture. That crunch gave way to the tangy brightness of the barely ripe fruit, cut by the richness of the mayo. In small mountain towns and tobacco country, this sandwich meant resourcefulness. Nothing got wasted. Every tomato, even the ones that wouldn't ripen in time, became dinner. Families shared these at church socials, packed them in lunch pails for field work, and served them at supper when cash crops were being harvested. Today, this sandwich survives in southern soul food restaurants, a reminder that creativity and hunger birthed some of America's greatest comfort foods. Pork and vinegar sandwich. In the lean years of rural poverty, pork was the meat that sustained Appalachian families. Every part of the pig had purpose. The pork and vinegar sandwich took cheap cuts of pork shoulder, boiled until falling apart tender in large iron pots, then shredded and doused in sharp, acrid vinegar infused with pepper and salt. This wasn't barbecue sauce, this was pure stinging vinegar that cut through the richness of the meat like a knife. Piled hot onto biscuits or soft white bread, the sandwich was tangy, slightly tough, and absolutely filling. The vinegar served multiple purposes. It preserved the meat when refrigeration was unreliable, tenderized tough cuts, and stretched resources by making a little meat go a long way when mixed with bread. In West Virginia and eastern Kentucky, this was weeknight supper, made in massive batches that fed families of 8 or more. The sharp, puckering vinegar flavor became comfort itself. The taste of survival, ingenuity, and the kind of food that doesn't need money to be magnificent. This sandwich reminds us that sometimes the simplest ingredients create the most enduring memories. Bean loaf sandwich. Dried beans were the protein backbone of rural southern life in the early 1970s. Cheap, shelf-stable, and nutritious enough to keep families healthy on minimal income. Bean loaves were made by mashing cooked beans with breadcrumbs, egg, onion, and seasoning, then baking them into loaves similar to meatloaf. Sliced thick and fried until the edges crisped in cast iron, these sandwiches had an earthy, dense texture that was deeply satisfying. Placed between buttered bread with a slice of cheese and a smear of mustard, they offered complete protein, beans and bread, creating the amino acids needed for a day's work. In rural Mississippi and Arkansas, bean loaf sandwiches were Tuesday supper, often made on Mondays when the week's beans were already cooked. Mothers packed them in lunch pails for children walking to one-room schoolhouses. They were humble, unglamorous, and absolutely essential to survival. The loaf held together perfectly and stayed fresher longer than meat sandwiches. What made this remarkable was how a simple mash of beans transformed into something that felt substantial and nourishing, proving that resourcefulness and care could create dignity even in desperate circumstances. Chitterlings sandwich. Chitterlings, the intestines of pigs, represented the ultimate nose-to-tail eating decades before it became fashionable. Boiled for hours until tender and flavored with vinegar, spices, and rendered fat, these sandwiches carried a distinctive, intense flavor that wasn't for everyone. The texture was chewy and slightly gelatinous, with an aroma that filled entire homes and announced dinner from blocks away. Placed on soft bread or biscuits, often with hot sauce and onions, this sandwich was economical brilliance, using parts that would otherwise be discarded. In black communities throughout the rural South, Chitterlings represented cultural heritage and resourcefulness dating back generations. What outsiders sometimes dismissed as poor man's food, families understood as ancestral cooking, carrying stories of survival and celebration. These weren't shameful meals, they were Friday night traditions, holiday dishes prepared with pride and served at family tables with dignity. The Chitterlings sandwich taught important lessons, that every part of what feeds you deserves respect, that cultural food traditions held power regardless of economics, and that flavor and meaning transcend social class. This dish survives today as soul food, proof that some foods endure because they're genuinely delicious and deeply important. Grape jelly and loaf meat sandwich. This combination sounds strange until you understand Depression and poverty-era ingenuity. Processed loaf meat, the cheapest lunch meat available, often containing offal and filler, was given sweetness and richness by grape jelly spread directly onto the meat. The jelly's sweetness masked the metallic tang of cheap processed meat, while the bread provided neutral stability. The result was a sandwich that tasted almost like an accidental dessert, offering a psychological comfort that transcended its humble components. Children especially loved these, and mothers made them knowing the jelly would make a cheap meal feel special. In rural Georgia, West Virginia, and Kentucky, throughout the early 1970s, this sandwich represented making do with what the food budget allowed. A jar of grape jelly cost pennies and lasted through several weeks of lunches. The sweetness hit the bloodstream quickly, providing energy for work or school. What made this remarkable wasn't culinary sophistication. It was the mother's understanding that a little sweetness could transform scarcity into something children looked forward to. This sandwich reminds us that love and creativity can make even the most limited resources feel abundant. Deviled ham sandwich. Deviled ham came in small tins, affordable and shelf-stable, transformed by the addition of mayonnaise, mustard, and pickle relish into a paste that filled sandwiches across rural America. The ham itself was processed meat, part mechanical separation, part actual ham, all efficiency. Mixed with creamy mayonnaise, sharp mustard, and the vinegary brightness of relish, it became something with personality. The flavor was salty, tangy, and vaguely smoky, filling your mouth with unexpected complexity. These sandwiches were church picnic staples made by ladies' auxiliary groups and packed for outdoor gatherings. The deviled ham paste held together perfectly and didn't require refrigeration for hours, crucial for communities without reliable coolers. In Appalachian towns and rural southern communities, deviled ham sandwiches meant social occasions, not fancy, but intentional. Women took pride in the smoothness of their deviled ham mixture, in getting the spice balance just right. Fathers brought these to work, construction sites, and fishing trips. Children opened their lunch pails, hoping to find these instead of plain Bologna. What made deviled ham remarkable was its transformation from industrial ingredient into something that could impress at community gatherings, proving that skill with humble ingredients created real value and connection. Corned beef hash sandwich. Corned beef hash represented the morning after sandwich, using leftovers from boiled corned beef dinners mixed with diced potatoes, onions, and seasonings, then pan-fried until crispy on the outside while staying tender inside. This wasn't breakfast food for most rural families. It was supper, made from what remained after the Sunday roast. The mixture was pressed down in cast iron until a crust formed, then loosened and piled onto bread with ketchup and possibly a fried egg. Each bite delivered the salty richness of corned beef, soft potatoes binding everything together, and crispy edges providing textural contrast. In working-class neighborhoods across the South, this sandwich meant stretching resources creatively. Nothing was wasted. The scraps of meat and yesterday's potatoes became something more substantial than either could be alone. Families understood the value of this alchemy, combining humble leftovers into something filling enough for a day's labor. This sandwich teaches economical wisdom still relevant today, that creativity with yesterday's ingredients creates both savings and satisfaction. The texture, the flavor, and the knowledge that nothing was wasted made this sandwich taste like resourcefulness itself. Fried egg and ketchup sandwich. Simple to the point of seeming impossible, yet absolutely beloved throughout rural America in the early 1970s. A fried egg, yolk still soft, white set firm, placed on soft white bread with ketchup and often a thin slice of butter or mayonnaise. The heat of the egg warmed everything, the yolk creating a natural sauce when it broke, the ketchup adding tangy sweetness. This sandwich cost almost nothing. Eggs were plentiful from backyard chickens, bread was homemade or store-bought in bulk, ketchup was pantry staple. Yet it provided complete protein and delivered comfort. Mothers made these for breakfast before school or work, for lunch when the garden needed tending, for supper when time was short. Men carried these in lunch pails to factories and construction sites, eating them cold hours later, but still satisfying. The fried egg's richness combined with ketchup's sweetness created something mysteriously appealing to children and adults alike. In Appalachia and throughout rural areas, this sandwich proved that you didn't need complexity or expense to create something people genuinely loved. The beauty was in its honesty. No pretense, just protein, carbohydrate, and satisfaction. This sandwich endures because it's actually genuinely delicious. Peanut butter and pickle sandwich. This combination emerged from Depression-era creativity and stuck around because it actually worked. Creamy peanut butter mixed with dill pickle slices, or sometimes pickle juice drizzled over the peanut butter, created a strange, compelling flavor. Salty, tangy, savory peanut butter interrupted by briny pickle brightness. Children often loved these despite their strangeness, and mothers appreciated the protein from peanut butter combined with the acid-preserved vegetables. The pickles provided crunch that peanut butter alone couldn't offer, plus the vinegar cut through richness. In rural Tennessee, Kentucky, and Arkansas, variations of this sandwich appeared regularly, sometimes with pickle relish instead of slices, sometimes with the brine mixed right into the peanut butter. The cost was negligible. Peanut butter was affordable protein, pickles were home-preserved from gardens or bought cheaply by the jar. What made this remarkable was how a combination that sounds absolutely terrible actually became something people craved. Food historians trace this back to the 1930s, but families kept making it through the early 1970s because it genuinely provided balanced nutrition, lasted through lunch without degrading, and tasted interesting. This sandwich challenges our assumptions about what combinations work, proving that resourcefulness creates real innovation. Pimento cheese sandwich. Pimento cheese, the holy trinity of southern sandwiches, combined sharp cheddar cheese, roasted red pimento peppers, and mayonnaise into a spread that became legendary. Homemade versions were made by shredding cheese, draining canned pimentos, mixing with mayo, and sometimes adding mustard and hot sauce. The result was creamy, slightly tangy, with subtle heat and sweetness. Spread thick on soft bread, these sandwiches were church potluck standards and ladies' luncheon favorites. The cheese provided calcium and protein, the pimentos added vitamins and gentle sweetness, and the mayo created the binding richness. In the early 1970s South, pimento cheese represented elevated simplicity. Nothing fancy, but made with intention and pride. Families guarded their specific recipes, adjusting spice levels and mayo ratios to personal preference. Some added celery or pecans, some kept it pure. These sandwiches appeared at bridge clubs, church gatherings, and ladies' auxiliary meetings. What made pimento cheese remarkable was how it transcended economic class. Wealthy ladies made it with expensive cheese. Poor families made it with whatever cheese was available, but everyone recognized its value. This sandwich survives today as a Southern tradition, proof that some combinations achieve such perfect balance they become immortal. Liver and onion sandwich. Liver was cheap, nutrient-dense organ meat that appeared regularly on working-class tables. Sliced thin and fried in butter with onions until the liver became tender and the onions softened into sweet mush, this combination developed deeply savory, almost mushroom-like complexity. Piled onto bread, often buttered biscuits, with the onions creating natural sauce, this sandwich delivered iron, B vitamins, and satisfaction. In Appalachian communities and throughout the rural South, liver and onions represented Tuesday supper, something made when money was tight but nutrition needed to be solid. Mothers understood that liver's richness meant a small amount went far, especially when stretched across children and husbands. The smell of frying liver filled kitchens for blocks, announcing dinner time to entire neighborhoods. What initially seems off-putting, eating organ meat, was actually nutritional brilliance and culinary sophistication. The liver's mineral content provided sustained energy, the onions provided sweetness and texture, the butter created richness. This sandwich taught generations that nose-to-tail eating wasn't trendy foodie vocabulary, but basic family economics and nutrition. Today, this sandwich appears in upscale restaurants as elevated comfort food, yet rural families never stopped recognizing its genuine deliciousness. Peanut butter and bacon sandwich. This combination represented the moment when scarcity resources could be combined into something genuinely luxurious. Crispy bacon provided smokiness and salt. Creamy peanut butter offered richness and protein. Soft bread created neutral stability. The bacon's saltiness enhanced the peanut butter's inherent sweetness, while the peanut butter's richness complemented bacon's smokiness. In rural homes where bacon came from home-raised pigs, this sandwich was special occasion food, made when money was available or when showing particular love. Mothers made these for husbands before hard labor days. Fathers made them for children as treats. The combination provided complete protein and sustained energy through hours of work. In the early 1970s South, this sandwich meant indulgence within reach. Not expensive, but not every day either. The crackling crunch of proper bacon gave way to creamy peanut butter, creating textural contrasts that made each bite interesting. What makes this sandwich endure is honest deliciousness. The combination genuinely works, satisfying both hunger and cravings for richness and salt. This sandwich proves that sometimes simple combinations, executed well, transcend economics to become actual food that people genuinely love. Fried liver mush sandwich. Liver mush, that peculiar Appalachian creation combining pork liver, pork meat, cornmeal, and spices pressed into loaves, was sliced and fried until the exterior crisped, while the interior stayed soft and almost creamy. The flavor was deeply savory, vaguely livery, but mellowed by the cornmeal and pork, almost sausage-like in complexity. In North Carolina's Piedmont region and throughout Appalachia, liver mush sandwiches were breakfast tradition, Sunday supper staple, and country store lunch standard. The slices fried quickly, the crispy exterior shattering between teeth before revealing tender, creamy inside. Piled onto bread with mustard, pickles, or just butter, these sandwiches delivered sustained energy crucial for farm work. Liver mush appeared at church breakfasts, was packed for school lunches, and lined dinner tables across generations. What outsiders sometimes found off-putting, eating organ meat in this particular form, was actually ingenious resource management, turning liver into something stable, storable, and endlessly versatile. The cornmeal binder meant a little liver went far, providing nutrition to feed families for days. This sandwich represents cultural identity so strong that despite modernization and changing tastes, liver mush remains celebrated. Appalachian communities still make it according to grandmother's recipes, proving some foods transcend trends through genuine cultural importance and actual deliciousness. Fried Bologna and potato chip sandwich. This combination seemed simple. Thin sliced bologna fried until the edges curled and crisped, then placed on soft bread with potato chips, adding crunch. Yet there was chemistry here. The fried bologna's rendered fat created richness. The salt crust that formed on its surface provided concentrated flavor. The potato chips offered textural contrast and additional salt. In working-class neighborhoods throughout the South, this sandwich appeared regularly, cheap, quick, filling, and undeniably tasty. Bologna was refrigerated meat stable for weeks. Potato chips came in bulk bags costing pennies. Bread was abundant. Mothers made these for lunch pails. Fathers grabbed them for job sites. Children found them in their school bags. The beauty was the texture contrast, crispy fried bologna against soft bread cushioned by salty chips. Each bite delivered satisfying crunch, savory richness, and salt, in proportions that the brain recognized as genuinely good. This sandwich teaches important lessons about how simple combinations, executed with attention to texture and flavor, create something memorable. The fried bologna and chips weren't luxurious, but they were absolutely undeniably delicious. Proof that cooking greatness isn't about expensive ingredients, but about understanding how flavors and textures interact. Butter and sugar sandwich. This sandwich seems almost offensive in its simplicity. Soft white bread spread thick with butter, then sprinkled generously with white sugar, pressed together and eaten immediately. The butter would melt slightly, the sugar would dissolve partially, creating something between a sandwich and a candy. In the early 1970s rural South, this appeared regularly, not as a regular meal, but as a treat. A moment of joy available to children when money for candy wasn't in the budget. Mothers made these for sick children, for special treats during long workdays, for moments when a little sweetness could brighten a difficult day. The taste was simple. Butter's richness, sugar's sweetness, bread's neutral base. Yet, psychologically, this combination delivered something powerful. A moment of indulgence that cost almost nothing but felt luxurious. In Appalachian communities and throughout rural poverty, this sandwich existed in that strange zone where desperation and creativity merged. Parents used available resources to create moments of joy for children who had little else. What makes this sandwich important historically isn't culinary sophistication, but human warmth, the willingness to create sweetness and moments of happiness from virtually nothing. This sandwich reminds us that love and intention matter more than ingredients. Fried catfish sandwich. In southern river towns and rural areas where catfish filled creeks and ponds, fried catfish sandwiches represented regional tradition and genuine luxury. Whole catfish were cleaned, filleted, dredged in cornmeal seasoned with paprika, cayenne, and salt, then fried in hot oil until the exterior turned golden brown and crunchy, while the flesh inside stayed white and tender. The meat was delicate, flaky, with subtle sweetness. Piled onto soft bread or fried cornmeal buns with coleslaw and tartar sauce, these sandwiches tasted like summer, like community fish fries, like celebration. For families living near water, catfish were free protein. Catch them in creeks using lines or traps, prepare them simply, and feed the family. In rural Georgia, Louisiana, Arkansas, and throughout the Mississippi Delta, catfish sandwiches meant resourcefulness, meeting abundance. These weren't poverty food, but celebration food made for church gatherings, family reunions, and summer evenings. The flesh's delicate texture, the cornmeal's crunch, the coleslaw's acid, cutting through richness. This sandwich achieved balance and deliciousness. What made catfish remarkable was how it provided genuine bounty from easily accessible sources, transforming work, catching the fish, into feast. This sandwich endures today because it's genuinely, absolutely delicious. Proof that simple preparation of fresh ingredients creates food people never forget. Potato and onion sandwich. This sandwich emerged from Depression-era necessity and persistence through the early 1970s because it actually provided substance. Boiled potatoes and onions were mashed together with butter, salt, and pepper, sometimes bound with a bit of egg, then spread on bread or between slices of fried potato bread. The mixture was starchy, filling, and nearly free. Potatoes were garden staples, onions were preserved from harvest, butter and salt were pantry basics. In Appalachian communities, this sandwich meant security and survival. Potatoes don't spoil quickly. They provide carbohydrates and energy, and they stretch to feed large families. The cooked potato-onion mash, when properly seasoned, developed sweet and savory complexity. The butter added richness. The salt brought everything into focus. This wasn't gourmet food, but it was genuine comfort. Warm mashed potatoes between bread, the simplicity of it almost meditative. Mothers made these for supper during winter when fresh food was scarce. Children packed these in lunch pails, knowing they'd stay warm through the school day. What makes this sandwich important is how it represents stability during uncertainty, knowing that potatoes stored in root cellars could feed your family through lean months. This sandwich is proof that sometimes the most enduring food isn't about flavors and techniques, but about fundamental security and the comfort of knowing you won't go hungry. Canned salmon salad sandwich. Canned salmon was miracle food for rural families in the early 1970s. Shelf-stable protein that didn't require refrigeration, affordable enough for regular meals, and packed with omega-3 fatty acids. Mixed with mayonnaise, diced celery, onion, and sometimes pickle relish, salmon salad became something approaching sophistication. The flavor was briny, slightly fishy, rich with umami from the salmon and mayo. The celery provided crunch, the relish added acid and sweetness. These sandwiches appeared at ladies' luncheons, church gatherings, and family tables. Mothers made these for special occasions or when they wanted something that felt a bit fancier than usual. The ingredients mixed easily, the result stayed stable, and the protein was complete. In rural areas where fresh fish wasn't available, canned salmon represented access to ocean bounty, to the wider world, to foods that felt cosmopolitan compared to beans and bacon. What made salmon salad remarkable was its balance of accessibility and perceived luxury. Cheap enough for regular families, but feeling special enough for occasions. The combination of mayo's richness with salmon's inherent fishy flavor created something surprisingly sophisticated. This sandwich reminds us that innovation sometimes just means applying basic technique to available ingredients, creating perception of abundance from actual scarcity. Ham and cheese sandwich. The ham and cheese sandwich was the reliable workhorse of lunchboxes everywhere, a simple combination that never failed to satisfy. Thick slices of deli ham and cheese, usually American, Swiss, or cheddar, were layered between slices of bread with mustard, mayonnaise, or both. The beauty of this sandwich was its dependability. It was the same whether packed for school lunch, served at a picnic, or grabbed for a quick dinner. Families often bought ham by the pound from the local deli, where it was sliced fresh and wrapped in white paper. The cheese was equally important. It needed to complement the ham without overpowering it. American cheese was the safe choice for children, while Swiss added a more mature flavor that adults preferred. Some families upgraded their ham and cheese with lettuce and tomato, creating a more substantial sandwich that could serve as a complete meal. The sandwich represented reliability and tradition, the kind of meal that fathers took to work in their lunch pails and children ate at school cafeterias. It required no special skills to prepare, but doing it well meant choosing quality ingredients and taking care with the proportions. The ham and cheese sandwich was democratic food. It crossed all social and economic lines, equally at home in a construction worker's lunchbox and a businessman's brown bag. During the Depression and wartime rationing, even a simple ham and cheese sandwich was a luxury that families treasured. Fried egg and cheese sandwich. The fried egg and cheese sandwich was breakfast simplicity at its finest, featuring a fried egg and melted cheese between slices of buttered toasted bread. The egg could be cooked any way, over easy for a runny yolk that added richness, or over hard for easier eating. American cheese was the most common choice because it melted smoothly and had a mild flavor that complemented the egg. The bread was typically white and buttered on the outside before being grilled, creating a golden, crispy exterior that contrasted with the creamy interior. This sandwich was often made for quick breakfasts or late-night snacks, representing comfort food that could be prepared in minutes with ingredients that most families always had on hand. The key was timing. The egg needed to be cooked properly while the bread toasted and the cheese melted, requiring coordination and attention. Some families added bacon or ham to make the sandwich more substantial, while others kept it simple with just egg and cheese. The sandwich was particularly popular with children because it was mild and familiar, and with teenagers because it was filling and could be made independently. It represented a time when breakfast was often cooked at home rather than grabbed on the go, when families gathered around the kitchen table to start their day together. The fried egg and cheese sandwich was honest food that made no pretensions, but delivered satisfaction and nourishment in every bite. Tuna salad sandwich. The tuna salad sandwich was a staple of lunchboxes and kitchen tables across America, a protein-packed meal that could be made ahead and enjoyed anywhere. The base was simple, canned tuna mixed with mayonnaise, but the variations were endless. Some families added chopped celery for crunch, others included hard-boiled eggs for extra richness. Sweet pickle relish was a common addition, providing tiny bursts of flavor and texture. More adventurous cooks might add chopped onions, capers, or even a touch of curry powder. The sandwich was typically served on white or wheat bread with lettuce leaves to add freshness and prevent the bread from getting soggy. Tuna salad represented practicality and nutrition during an era when mothers packed lunches every morning and planned meals around budget-friendly protein sources. Canned tuna was affordable, shelf-stable, and versatile. It could be dressed up for company or kept simple for everyday meals. The sandwich was perfect for summer picnics because it didn't require heating and actually tasted better when served cold. Children often requested tuna salad sandwiches because they were familiar and comforting, while adults appreciated their convenience and nutritional value. The key to a great tuna salad sandwich was finding the right balance between the tuna and mayonnaise, ensuring the mixture was moist but not soggy, flavorful but not overwhelming. Each family had their own secret touches that made their version special. Liverwurst sandwich. The liverwurst sandwich was an acquired taste that divided people into two camps: those who loved its rich, distinctive flavor, and those who couldn't get past its unusual texture. Made from ground liver mixed with pork and spices, liverwurst was spreadable and intensely flavored. The sandwich was typically built on rye bread with mustard, onions, and sometimes lettuce. European immigrants brought liverwurst to America, where it became popular in German and Jewish communities before spreading to the broader population. The spread was nutritious and affordable, providing iron and protein in a form that even children could learn to enjoy. Some families served liverwurst with sliced hard-boiled eggs, creating an even richer and more substantial sandwich. The key to a good liverwurst sandwich was balance. The strong flavor of the liver needed to be complemented by the right bread and condiments without being overwhelmed. Rye bread's hearty flavor stood up to the liverwurst, while mustard added sharpness that cut through the richness. The sandwich represented a time when people ate organ meats regularly and when waste was considered shameful. Liverwurst was a way to use every part of the animal while creating something delicious and nutritious. The sandwich was often packed in lunch boxes for men who worked physical jobs, providing sustained energy and satisfaction. Spam sandwich. The Spam sandwich was wartime ingenuity that became peacetime comfort food, featuring the famous canned meat that fed families during World War II and beyond. Spam could be served cold, sliced thin, and layered on bread with mustard and lettuce, or fried until crispy and served warm. The meat was salty and had a distinctive flavor that people either loved or hated, but during rationing, it was often the only meat available. Families learned to prepare Spam in various ways. Some sliced it thick and grilled it like ham steaks. Others cubed it and mixed it with eggs for breakfast. The sandwich represented resilience and making do with what you had, turning necessity into a meal that could actually be quite satisfying. In Hawaii, Spam became so popular that it remains a local favorite to this day, often served with rice and seaweed. The mainland sandwich was typically simpler. Spam on white bread with mustard, maybe some lettuce if you were lucky. Some families fried the Spam to improve its texture and add flavor, creating crispy edges that made the sandwich more appealing. The Spam sandwich was democratic food that fed both rich and poor families during difficult times. It represented American ingenuity and the ability to find satisfaction in simple pleasures. While Spam never had the reputation of traditional deli meats, it served its purpose and created its own nostalgic memories for those who grew up eating it.